Hi, hello everyone. My name is Rachel Weisberg, and I am really excited to be here today with three of my colleagues to tell you all about the new Client Assistance Program and other services that we at Equip for Equality provide. Thank you to both INCIL and SILC for hosting this presentation today and helping us spread the word about CAP and EFE through all of our SIL networks in Illinois. So for folks who don't know, Equip for Equality is the protection and advocacy system for the state of Illinois. What does that mean? We're a private, independent, nonprofit organization, and we provide free legal services to people with disabilities about issues related to their disability. Our mission is to advance the human and civil rights of people with disabilities in Illinois, and we do that by having a few different legal teams. We have the civil rights team, special education clinic, and we have a group of folks that do abuse and neglect investigations. And we'll tell you a little bit more about each of those areas throughout today's presentation. One thing to note is that as the protection and advocacy system for the state of Illinois, Equip for Equality has several other kind of sister or brother organizations throughout the country. We're all within this called the PNA system, underneath the umbrella of the NDRN, the National Disability Rights Network. If you ever want to get in touch with Equip for Equality, you can always visit our website at www.equipforequality.org. So there's many things we could tell you about Equip for Equality, and hopefully we partnered with you and your SIL on many other advocacy efforts over the years. But for this particular presentation, we want to focus on the Client Assistance Program, or CAP. Okay, so what is CAP? Well, CAP is a program that's established by the Rehabilitation Act. And what it does generally is it says, the Rehabilitation Act was passed. It provides so many different types of services to people with disabilities, but Congress wanted to make sure that folks who were eligible for receiving services under the Rehabilitation Act had legal help and advocacy to make sure that they were getting those services. So in particular, what CAP does is we help people who are applying for or receiving services that are funded by the Rehab Act. What services are funded by the Rehab Act? Well, generally in Illinois, there's two big kind of buckets of services. Number one is vocational rehabilitation, right? So VR, voc rehab, vocational rehabilitation, employment support services, all those types of services that are provided to help people with disabilities obtain, maintain, and advance in employment. And that's provided by the Division of Rehabilitation Services, or DRS. Okay, that's one bucket. And we're going to talk more about what VR is and what DRS does a little bit later. The other bucket of services that are funded by the Rehabilitation Act is going to be no surprise to you, right? Because you as a SIL are funded by the Rehabilitation Act. And so CAP is also here to make sure that folks who are seeking access to your independent living services funded by the Rehabilitation Act is able to access those services, okay? In addition to that type of work, making sure folks are able to get the services funded under the Rehab Act, we also are supposed to advise and inform people about their rights under Title I of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Now, Title I of the ADA is the part of the law that provides employment rights protections. And this makes sense, right? Because a lot of the Rehabilitation Act is there to help people with disabilities get positions and get jobs. And so of course we want to make sure that once voc rehab comes in, helps folks get connected with a job, that there's no discrimination on at the job or at the work site. So we'll tell you a little bit more in depth about what we do with respect to Title I of the ADA. Okay, so if you look at CAP organizations, CAP programs all across the country, most of the CAP programs are housed within the state PNA. So remember I told you that Equip for Equality is the PNA for Illinois, and there's many other PNAs across the country. Most of those P&As are where the CAP program is housed. But for many, many years, the CAP program here in Illinois was housed inside state government, actually housed inside of DRS. But there's been a recognition that to be as effective and independent as possible, it makes sense to take CAP outside of state government to make sure that we can do the type of advocacy that CAP was really designed to do. So I'm really happy to say that as of July 1st of 2022, the Illinois CAP program was redesignated from within DRS to Equip for Equality. And I have to really applaud DRS and the independent living community, because there was a lot of support for this program, and DRS recognized how having an independent CAP could only further their program and help support people with disabilities that they're serving. So I'm really pleased to be here today to introduce the CAP team at Equip for Equality. We really wanted you to get to know us so that if you have any questions, either for your own consumers or if we're reaching out to you, that you know who we are. We're not a hidden entity. You can always just reach out to who we are. So, okay, from here on, we're going to bounce around a little bit and we'll say who's talking before we go. So pass it over to you all.
Hi, this is Megan again, and so we've come to the point where we want to really dive in and start off our conversation about DRS and DRS vocational services. And I want to preface this by saying you may have heard of DRS as DOORS. So for purposes of this conversation, DRS and DOORS are one and the same, so we just want to familiarize all of you with the wonderful services provided by DRS. So DRS is housed within the Illinois Department of Human Services, and DRS actually administers two separate programs. So they administer the Home Services Program, which helps people with disabilities who need supports in their home and help with activities of daily living. And they also administer the Vocational Rehabilitation Program. So for purposes of the CAP program, we're only talking about individuals who are either applying for or receiving VR services through DRS. But I do want to mention that Equip for Equality helps individuals who are applying for or receiving home services. So you can feel free to contact Equip for Equality's general intake number if you have consumers who need assistance with home services. But for CAP, we're only talking about VR recipients or applicants. And as Rachel mentioned earlier, the purpose of the VR program is all geared towards employment. So really helping people prepare for, obtain, maintain, and advance in employment. Next slide, please. And so there are a couple of different ways that individuals can apply for DRS VR services. So the first is to reach out directly to the local DRS office. And in the materials that you've received, there's a hyperlink to a website that'll actually allow you to search for the local DRS office. Most of the time, you'll just be searching in the drop-down menu for the county that you live in. But in some of the larger counties like Cook County, there are multiple DRS offices that serve individuals. So you can reach out to the local DRS office that way on behalf of yourself as an applicant or on behalf of one of your consumers who's interested in applying for DRS services. The other way is you can fill out an online referral form. Again, in the slide PowerPoints, there's a link to that online referral form. And anyone can complete this online referral form. We as CAP advocates can fill it out on behalf of an individual. You as a SIL advocate or counselor, a friend or family member, or the individual who's directly seeking services. So either way, if you submit an online referral or if you contact the local DRS office, you should hear back within 30 days to conduct the initial intake assessment. And Sarah's going to talk a little bit more about what that application and eligibility process looks like. But I also want to share that we're still in the pandemic, kind of coming out of the pandemic, but most folks at DRS offices are still working remotely. So you will have to leave a message for the DRS office and then wait for a staff person to call you back. So I'll turn it over to Sarah to talk more about the application and eligibility process for DRS services.
Hi, this is Sarah. And so, yes, so after you've made a referral to DRS and you've had that initial intake interview, the next stage is generally for DRS to determine eligibility for services. And so, broadly speaking, to qualify for DRS services, an individual must be interested in working and have a significant physical or mental impairment that makes it difficult to work or is putting up barriers for them to find employment. And this would include high school and transition students who are looking to enter the workforce or are looking for part-time work experiences. There's no age limit on these services. And yes, and as part of determining eligibility, DRS might ask for medical documentation or for more information about your disability. And then they will make a determination of eligibility. And so after somebody has been found eligible for DRS services, the next step is for the individual to work with their counselor to draft an individualized plan for employment, or IPE. And so this is a document that will outline the individual's employment goal and also the services that DRS is going to provide to help the person reach that goal. And so, and if an individual isn't entirely certain what sort of job they want or what their employment goal should be, DRS can do an assessment to help determine what a good employment goal would be and look at the individual's strengths and resources and concerns and abilities and just try to come up with an employment goal that fits what the person is looking for. And so in the IP, like I mentioned, it's going to list that goal and it's also going to list the different services. And then it will be signed by both the counselor and the individual. And one important thing to note too about an IPE is that in the development of an IPE, each person has informed choice. So the customer has informed choice about both what their goal is and also what services they're going to receive to get there. And they get to have a say in determining those things. And so some examples of services that DRS can provide. DRS can provide job training and job coaching, assistance finding a job, helping people find job placement specialists to work with. DRS can pay for supplies that somebody might need for employment, including things like a licensure fee. They can also provide assistance with education. So if somebody is looking to pursue an employment goal that requires higher education, DRS might be able to help with tuition for somebody to go to college or to get a degree or for another training program. DRS can also provide assistive technology. They can pay for vocational evaluations, and they can also provide independent living support. And then the main catch-all is that DRS can also provide all other goods and services determined necessary for the individual with a disability to achieve an employment outcome. So if something doesn't fall neatly into one of those categories, it could still be something that DRS can provide if it's necessary to achieve the employment outcome.
Hi, this is Megan again. So we wanted to share some real examples of types of cases that would be good for referrals to the client assistance program, specifically how CAP can help individuals who are applying for or receiving DRS services. So the first kind of few buckets of CAP cases are for individuals who have not yet applied for DRS services. So you and your consumer can reach out to us together or individually if they just say, hey, I want to work and I need some help with that. That person doesn't have to have any idea about the existence of DRS. And often a lot of people, unfortunately, don't know about the wonderful services that DRS provides. So if that individual needs help and supports, we can inform them about DRS and how to get connected. We can also help individuals figure out and navigate how to submit that online referral form or how to find the contact information for their local DRS office. Also, as I mentioned previously, after you submit that online referral form or leave a message for the local office, they're supposed to reach out to you within 30 days to do that initial intake assessment. If the individual hasn't heard back after 30 days, they can reach out to CAP and we can try to help figure out what's going on and follow up with the local DRS office. On the next slide, we'll see some examples here of situations where we're helping individuals who are already approved for DRS services. But first, I want to mention we can assist individuals who have applied for DRS services, but for one reason or another, DRS has determined that they're ineligible. We can try and see if there's a way to challenge that denial of eligibility. And then for existing DRS customers, those who have been approved by DRS and found eligible, we can get involved, as Sarah mentioned, that IPE document. Sometimes the DRS customer and the counselor, there's a dispute or disagreement about the employment goals that are to be included in that IPE document, or there's a disagreement about what services and supports DRS will need to provide in order to meet those employment goals. So these are all situations where folks can reach out to CAP and we can assist. Additionally, there's sometimes situations where there's just kind of a breakdown or a stall in communication between the DRS counselor and the customer. So we can get involved. We can sometimes just have a quick conversation with the counselor and with the individual and hopefully get that relationship back on track so that they're able to keep working towards those important employment goals. And lastly, we have a lot of folks calling CAP when their case has been closed. Either they feel that that closure was improper, that it was closed too early, or it might have been closed and they need some services after the fact. So those are some situations that CAP get involved. Next, I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Yeah, hi. This is Sarah again. And one other thing that we wanted to emphasize is that CAP goes beyond disagreements. There doesn't need to be a conflict for CAP to get involved. It doesn't necessarily mean that anyone's done anything wrong. We're here as a resource both for customers and for their counselors to help ensure that things work and that people can get access to these services and cases move smoothly. We can also help somebody understand their rights and also just give tips for self-advocacy and just answer any complicated questions that that somebody thinks we might be able to help with. And so, we're here as a general resource, not just to help with disagreements. And we also want to go over some examples of recent CAP cases. And so one case we had recently was a young man with ADHD who was going to college to get a degree in physical education. And when he graduated from high school, he submitted a referral to DRS in April, so soon after his graduation, because he was seeking assistance with his tuition. And he didn't receive a response. DRS lost his referral in the system, and he didn't get a reply back. And he submitted another referral in August and started school. And he was told by his VR counselor at that point that, especially because of the issues with his first referral, that DRS would be able to pay for his tuition despite the delay in getting in contact. However, the following spring, he was informed that DRS actually would not be able to pay for his tuition after all because his IPE, which is that document we talked about earlier, had not been completed and signed in time for him to get prior approval for that tuition. And that's something that DRS requires. You have to have a signed IPE before before you start classes in order to receive tuition funding. And the client went to a hearing and he was not successful at the hearing. And after that, he got in contact with CAP and we were able to help advocate for him and explain the situation a little bit more to DRS and, explain why we felt that in this situation, he was justified in receiving a refund, and DRS agreed to pay the customer back for that semester of classes. And then another case, this one is somebody who was applying for services but received a letter stating that their file had been closed due to no contact, which is what DRS does when they're having trouble getting in touch with somebody. And so we reached out to the counselor and we were able to figure out that there had been a mix-up about phone numbers, and we were able to help reestablish communication and make sure that the customer's case would stay open and she could move forward. And then another recent case, the client is a wheelchair user and asked DRS to fund a new wheelchair that would specifically help with some of the barriers to employment that the customer had been experiencing. And DRS, before they could agree to provide this, they needed some more information about how this new wheelchair would help advance specifically the client's employment goals versus just being for use, a wheelchair for use in general life. And so CAP was able to assist the client in communicating with DRS about this and providing, both medical documentation and other documentation to support this request. And DRS ultimately agreed to provide the client with the new wheelchair.
This is Megan. I just wanted to share a final CAP case example. We worked with an individual who owns his own trucking business, and he sought DRS funding for what's called job retention services. And specifically, this individual sought funding. His truck that he uses for his business had broken down and needed some money for repairs so that he could continue operating the trucking business. So prior to this individual contacting CAP, there was some confusion about whether or not he met the DRS criteria for these job retention cases. And so CAP assisted this individual by participating in conversations with DRS to really clarify that job retention criteria so we could better understand it, better explain it to our client. But also we helped to explain the client's business operation in more detail and why the funding that he was seeking was so essential for him to be able to maintain and advance in his business. So as a result of these conversations, the DRS counselor was able to prepare a new application for job retention services. And we actually found out, there's an update to the slide, that request was approved. And so now we're just working with vendors. That was a really great outcome. So before we turn to the next slide, which talks about CAP's systemic initiatives, I just kind of wanted to highlight that there are many different dispute resolution mechanisms that are available to us as CAP advocates. So it can range really from an informal conversation with DRS counselors or you as SIL advocates. And it can also go up the chain if you think to an informal resolution conference, a mediation, or we can go so far as to represent an individual at an administrative hearing. Sarah mentioned a client who had gone to a hearing before in one of those updates. So I think it's really important that CAP provides this formalized mechanism for dispute resolution and a range of options so that we can really make sure that individuals are getting the services that they're entitled to. So next on this slide, we've talked a lot about individual advocacy. So helping clients who are applying for DRS services or receiving them. But in addition to this individual work, CAP is really focused on systemic efforts. So really working to identify what are the larger barriers that are making it difficult for people with disabilities to obtain competitive and integrated employment. So identifying those barriers and really coming up with strategic solutions to remove those big barriers. So we are working towards identifying those and brainstorming with our colleagues by participating on the State Rehabilitation Council. Rachel is CAP's representative on the State Rehabilitation Council, or the SRC. So she attends those meetings regularly. We also have regular meetings and conversations with DRS leadership to figure out what are the issues that we're hearing about that aren't just a one-time issue, but issues that we're hearing about over and over again that might require some sort of policy changes or some sort of systemic approach, not just for the individual client. And we're also continuing to learn from all of our experience here, working with individuals who receive VR and independent living services, as well as relying on you all. You all are the folks on the ground, and we so value your input. What are issues that you're seeing that are really making it difficult for people with disabilities to obtain their employment goals? So this is just not a one-time pitch, but an ongoing pitch for your input so that we can tackle these larger systemic issues together.
And this is Emily. I just wanted to touch a little bit on some of those systemic issues that we've identified so far in thinking about how we can improve access to DRS services for specific populations that may have not had as much access previously. So a few of the areas that we've been focusing on are court-involved youth, on individuals transitioning out of prison or jail and kind of figuring out with DRS how we can expand access to DRS services and ensure that individuals have access, but also have knowledge of what is available. And then also working with individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities. So there have been several new DRS initiatives and collaborations with the Division of Developmental Disabilities to improve these services. So we've been really fortunate to collaborate with Equip for Equality's monitoring unit as well to really work on that area. So that's an exciting area that we're focusing on. Some other barriers that we've heard a lot about from people in the community and from clients that we are working with are transportation and sub-minimum wage work. So these are some of the areas that we've been trying to focus on in our systemic work. But as Megan said, we really want to continue to hear from you and from your clients of what issues you're seeing and how we might be able to focus our efforts. That being said, please share your experience with us. So we've included the survey link here, as well as, we'll make sure that that is a part of the slides and in the chat for you. But we want to know, what are some of the barriers that you see preventing people with disabilities from working, right? What are you seeing on the ground? What do you want CAP to know about the services? And then what suggestions do you have about how we approach cases? Is there a better way for us to communicate with you or to communicate with the DRS counselors in your community? We want to really open up that line of communication and listen to you. Because like Megan mentioned, you guys are the people on the ground, and we want to make sure that we're being responsive to the things that you're seeing. So you can contact us through the survey at any point, but also you can reach out to us directly. That was another reason why we wanted to do this and wanted you to be able to see who we are and to hear from us so that you can reach out to us directly as well.
Okay, well, thanks to my wonderful team for explaining all of the work that we're doing specific to ensuring folks have access to vocational rehabilitation services. I want to shift slightly and talk a little bit more in depth about the role that we're playing in educating folks about Title I and the employment rights of the ADA. So hopefully many of you already know that even before Equip for Equality started running the CAP program, we have a pretty robust practice in helping folks navigate employment rights situations. We, since 2017, have had an employment rights helpline. And so much of the work that we're doing under CAP is very similar to that type of work. But basically, if you're a person with a disability, if you're working with consumers with disabilities who have questions about their employment rights, they are welcome to contact CAP as well. Again, they can contact CAP or Equip for Equality. We'll get them to the right place. And, some examples of different types of questions that we hear a lot, someone might be applying for a job and have questions. Maybe they have a non-apparent disability and they want to know, well, what are the best practices about when to disclose or share information about their disability? That's something that they want to do during the job interview, wait till they get the job, wait till they get a job offer. And, there's a lot of these situations, there's no one size fits all, and it requires a little bit of a discussion to figure out what's best for that particular individual. We do that all the time, and we're very, very, very happy to have those conversations. Another big question that we get, I'd say probably the majority of our calls, have to do with reasonable accommodation, right? So we know what reasonable accommodations are. They're changes or tweaks that we make to the workplace to help make the workplace more accessible, anything from modifying how we do a job or getting equipment to modifying a schedule. Well, we can help throughout that reasonable accommodation process. We can help brainstorm accommodation ideas. We can help review requests to an employer. We can help figure out what to do if an employer says no and what to do next, or if the employer is a little bit difficult. We're here throughout the whole process and happy to talk to folks about that. And then, of course, there are unfortunately situations where there is going to be some sort of discrimination in the workplace. And those are also things that we can talk through. What are somebody's options? What does that path forward look like? What do you have to do in that situation? So all questions that we at CAP are here to help you or your consumers or anyone going through these types of situations. So just to give one example, of type of a recent CAP case that was an employment case. So here we have an individual who was working with DRS through their vocational rehabilitation program, and the client was able to obtain a job at a large employer. So wonderful, great VR success story. Unfortunately, once the employee started working, he started to experience some harassment and was kind of being forced to do this like one particular task that seemed like no one else really had to focus on that much. He really had to focus on it. And so, this was a perfect employment CAP situation, right? He called us, we coached him behind the scenes about how could he possibly advocate for himself in those situations. We ended up talking with his family and with the VR counselor, and ultimately they were able to, with some advice and some behind the scene coaching, do some of their own advocacy and explain, why the client wanted to do all of the tasks of his job and not focus on this one particular thing. And the employer was really receptive and responsive to the client's own advocacy. And now, the client's able to do the job that he was hired to do, that VR helped him get. So, a really great, I'd say, group effort in making sure that the VR services were actually, seen in practice. Pass it over to Emily to talk a little bit about transition services, another big part of what we're doing.
Thanks, Rachel. This is Emily. So as Rachel said, I just wanted to talk about transition services. So another aspect of our role with CAP is to provide information and advice to assist DRS customers and potential applicants and accessing these VR services while they're still in school. So there are a number of different services that are available to youth while they're in school and right when they're coming out of school in this really transitional period, right, coming into adulthood. So there are a number of different ways that we can help in this capacity. So we can help youth and their families get connected, right, whether that's with the pre-employment transition services, which I'll talk a little bit about, or just direct DRS services in their communities. We know that this can be kind of a complicated process, especially for young people who are trying to navigate it for the first time. So that's something that we can help with. We can also answer your questions, right, or your consumers' questions about special education transition services. One of the most complicated parts of kind of this aspect of DRS services is figuring out what can a student get through school, and then what can they get through DRS vocational rehabilitation services, and how do we kind of balance those out, right? Who is responsible for what, and how do we make that really function for a young person? So we can help answer any of your questions about those situations. And then we can also help advocate for those services, right? So we can help you and your consumer advocate for appropriate services through school and with DRS. So kind of balancing those systems and providing advocacy in both areas. So those pre-ETS or pre-employment transition services are services that are specifically designed for youth while they're still in school, right? When we're preparing for them to enter adulthood and enter the workforce, right? So those are services that are focused on job exploration counseling, work-based learning experiences that are both in the school, right, and within the student's community, counseling and post-secondary opportunities, workplace readiness training, and self-advocacy skills. So these are all what should be included in pre-employment transition services or pre-ETS. So thinking about kind of the CAP cases and when you might want to refer clients to us when you're thinking about these scenarios. So one example is we worked with a student with autism who was originally connected with EFE with some special education concerns. And the student's initial goal was to attend community college. So EFE provided support on the special education side of things, right? Helping make sure that the student had access to the appropriate services they needed through school to be ready for that next step. And then we also connected the student and his family with DRS so that he could open up a DRS case, right, and start working with a caseworker. Unfortunately, when the student did that, there was some confusion. And so the student's goal really didn't match what they wanted to do anymore, right? Their goal needed to be changed and the family really struggled with how to do that. So this is a good example of kind of what Sarah was talking about. It was not a big conflict, right? With DRS, it's more so that there was just some confusion and some struggle with communication. So we were able to assist the family in contacting their counselor and scheduling a meeting to really get that student's IPE updated and get them the services they needed to reach their new goal.
This is Megan again. As Rachel explained at the very outset of this training, the CAP program assists individuals who are applying for or receiving services that are funded through the Rehabilitation Act. So we've talked a lot about the DRS vocational services that are funded through the Rehabilitation Act, but also the wonderful services that you all provide, the network of SILs, those independent living services are also funded under the Rehabilitation Act. So in addition to helping individuals access DRS VR services, we really want to help them access and continue to benefit from the independent living services that you all provide at your SILs. So just as we've shared before that CAP doesn't need to involve a conflict or anything, we don't want any of you to be concerned if we reach out to you all on behalf of requests that we've gotten from consumers. We may just want to chat with you to figure out, to get some clarity about what the situation is. We might want to review some records. Our role here at CAP is really resolution focused and trying to, resolve or clear up any communication or anything that's standing in the way of the individual benefiting from and accessing those services.
So in addition to trainings like this one, we are also working on developing self-advocacy resources to be available to clients, to yourself, to any other providers who have questions about individuals' rights throughout these processes or information that they might want to know. So we're working on developing a robust library of fact sheets, sample letters, and worksheets, some of which are already on EFE's CAP website. Some of the topics that we are developing are things like understanding the VR process, right? Self-advocacy tips, Title I, some of those issues that Rachel discussed earlier of disclosure and reasonable accommodations, transition, right? And we're planning to have all of these available in English, Spanish, and ASL. And then we're also working on expanding that to other languages. So especially if you have clients and you know of certain languages that it would be helpful to have these resources developed, and please let us know that as well. And like I said, those will all be available on our Equip for Equality CAP website, which is just www.equipforequality.org/CAP. And like I said, in addition to the language piece, if there are other fact sheets that you would like to see that you think would be helpful, please let us know about that as well. And trainings. So we also are doing some upcoming trainings. You can register on our website for those that are coming up. We've also archived a number of our trainings. So we've been doing trainings throughout the last few months on different topics, and those are available on our website. We did a training on ADA and best practices when applying for jobs as a person with a disability. We did a self-advocacy strategies training, changing workplace rules to do your job well, so focus on those reasonable accommodations. And then we also did a training on understanding your right to DRS services during high school, so those transition services. So how do you get in contact with us? So you can contact us through our website, right? You can also reach us through our helpline number, which is 1-855-452-2725. Or our email, which is cap@equipforequality.org.
And this is Sarah again, and we also want to give you an overview of what you can expect when you call CAP. And so it's similar to when you call EFE, but any other issue, the callers will leave a voicemail with their name and contact information or send an email with that information. We'll do our best to get back to the caller as soon as possible, generally within about 3 days. And then we will schedule an initial intake call. And during the intake call, we'll start by asking some demographic questions like address, date of birth, just to get a little bit of background information about the caller. And then we'll ask about the situation and, what happened, why are you reaching out? What's the issue that occurred? And then we'll also ask about goals, because we want to try to figure out what the caller is looking to accomplish and what help we can provide. And so in some situations, after we've talked through the situation and we've learned what the caller's goal is, we might be able to just answer quick questions on the spot, provide, and then follow up later with some advice in writing. But more often we will bring issues to the rest of our team and, discuss the person's case, discuss, what sort of help they're looking for, and then figure out the best way that we can advise them or provide assistance. And then we'll follow up with the caller after we've had that discussion, and we will talk about potential next steps. And so one other thing to note is that the CAP directive is to try to resolve situations with the lowest level of intervention needed. So, we don't want to jump immediately to filing an appeal and going to a hearing. We want to see if we can facilitate better communication, work towards an informal resolution, and we want to try those steps first before we move forward with those higher levels of intervention.
This is Megan again. So as we're kind of wrapping up with this training, we thought it might be helpful to share some other programs and services that Equip for Equality offers that may be beneficial to some of your consumers or others within your network. So the first of which is provided by funding that we receive from Access to Justice. And Equip for Equality continues to advocate and assist individuals who are leaving carceral settings, so leaving jails or prisons and transitioning back into the community. I'm sure it doesn't come as a surprise to anyone that anyone leaving those types of settings, particularly people with disabilities, often really face new challenges in accessing housing, healthcare, employment, and other programs and services. So through this grant funding from Access to Justice, we're able to help these individuals to try and remove those barriers and help them access the supports that they need when they're leaving those settings. So our slides contain the contact information for our colleague Ruben Batista, who is working on this very important initiative. And the second program that we wanted to discuss with you is provided by funding from the Illinois Equal Justice Foundation. And some or many of you on the call may be familiar with the new laws here in Illinois that have legalized cannabis. These are obviously different from federal laws, but it's important for all of us to understand the impact of these new laws that have legalized cannabis here in Illinois, as many individuals who may have arrests or convictions for cannabis-related offenses may be eligible for expungement. So through the Illinois Equal Justice Foundation, there are free trainings and seminars about these new laws and kind of how they can play out and impact many different areas in life, whether it's housing or employment. So if you're interested in those seminars, you can reach out to Barry Taylor, and his contact information is on the slide.
All right, this is Sarah again, and we also wanted to highlight the Employment Rights Helpline, which is another resource. And as Rachel mentioned earlier, CAP can provide some advice on Title I of the ADA as part of our work with VR customers. But but EFE also has the Employment Rights Helpline, which provides advice on employment discrimination and other employment related issues to people with disabilities in Illinois. And so if somebody in Illinois is looking with a disability in Illinois is looking for assistance with requesting reasonable accommodations or learning more about their rights, or if they've experienced discrimination and they want more advice on their options, they can give the helpline a call and we can talk with them about their issue. We can answer their questions. We can sometimes assist with drafting requests for reasonable accommodations, share fact sheets and sample letters, and give referrals and provide other assistance as needed. And so to get in touch with the helpline, you can call 844-744-4879. You can also go to our website, equipforequality.org/employment, or you can email employment@equipforequality.org.
And this is Emily. As I mentioned before, I work in our special education clinic. And so as part of that special education clinic, we also have a helpline. So the idea behind it is to help students with disabilities access their right to a free and appropriate public education. So if anybody who has a special education concern or a question can contact us. It can be providers, parents, students themselves, anybody who is looking for assistance. We're happy to answer those questions. And similar to how Sarah described that employment rights helpline, our special education helpline provides kind of answers to those questions. If families have questions, we can provide what we call self-advocacy assistance, where we're giving information and resources so that the individual can hopefully resolve the issue on their own. We can also provide sample letters and forms for that and advice in the background. And then in select cases, we can provide legal advocacy and going into IEP meetings or meeting with school teams to try and help resolve issues. We also provide trainings. So if there are any questions about special education rights, we do a lot of parent trainings as well as provider trainings on what those rights look like and what your options are. So again, there is another helpline phone number. If we haven't mentioned it already, we know we have a lot of numbers, but please be assured that no matter what number you call, we will make sure and get you directed to who you need to speak with. So the number for the special education clinic helpline is 866-543-7046. But again, whatever number you call, we will make sure and get you to the right person.
And this is Rachel. We have neared the end of today's discussion. We're going to just wrap up by once again including the contact information for CAP at Equip for Equality. Check out our website. We've got a lot of great information there. We've got brochures that you can download. You can always call us again or email us. And just as a final reminder, we are happy to come and have conversations with you and your SIL, or if you would like additional brochures, like print brochures to have for your consumers, please feel free to reach out to us. We are more than happy to facilitate that in any way. Thank you for your time today. Please reach out if you have any questions, and we look forward to working with you. Thanks so much. Thanks to our interpreters and our captioner.